Imagine a time when the simple act of opening your front door didn't require a key, and a visit from the doctor meant he knew not just your ailment, but your name and your family's history. This was the backdrop of daily life in post-war America, a period often romanticized as a golden age. It was an era where a profound sense of security and quiet confidence was woven into the fabric of everyday simplicity. But what was the reality behind the nostalgic glow? Let's turn back the clock and explore the memories that shaped a generation. The American dream in the 1950s was tangible, starting with a place to call your own. A new home, a symbol of stability and success, averaged around $7,400. This wasn't a cramped apartment. It was a standalone house with a sizable yard, a green stage for childhood adventures with red wagons and backyard games. Inside, the gleam of hardwood floors was a point of pride, a surface that demanded regular upkeep. Yet the true wealth of the era wasn't measured in square footage or polished wood. It was found in the community that sprang up around these homes. Neighbors were an extension of family, familiar faces who became trusted friends, always keeping a watchful eye on each other's children and properties. This sense of security was bolstered by a stable economy. The median household income hovered near $3,200 annually, a sum that, while modest by today's standards, was enough to support a family, own a home, and even set aside funds for a yearly vacation. Most households functioned perfectly well with a single automobile, one television set, often in a bulky wooden console, and a single bathroom. And remarkably, this felt not just adequate but sufficient. Financial peace wasn't born from vast wealth, but from manageable expenses, a steady job, and the predictability of a post-war economic boom. It was a life built on a foundation of trust, community, and attainable goals. But what did the simple pleasures of this life cost, and how did people spend their leisure time? That's a journey we'll take in our next part. From the price of a home to the cost of living, we've set the stage. But what about the everyday luxuries, like a tank of gas or a trip to the movies? Up next, we fuel up the car and head to the corner store to see how far a dollar really went. With a stable roof over their heads, families in the 1950s found joy in life's simple, affordable pleasures. The cost of everyday items allowed for a sense of freedom that feels almost foreign today. Take a drive, for instance. In 1955, pulling into a gas station wasn't a moment of financial anxiety. A gallon of fuel cost just 29 cents. A single $5 bill was more than enough to fill the tank of a family sedan, leaving you with change for a refreshing Coca-Cola and a pack of gum from the vending machine. This affordability transformed the automobile from a mere utility into a key to exploration, encouraging Sunday drives on winding two-lane highways that were still very much a part of the local landscape. The service at the pump was an experience in itself, a small but significant ritual of courtesy. You never touched the nozzle. Polite, uniformed attendant would emerge, greet you with a nod, and proceed to fill your tank. But his job didn't end there. He'd diligently clean your windshield until it sparkled, check your oil, and perhaps even your tire pressure, all while addressing you with respect. This wasn't exceptional service, it was the standard. It was a culture where helping others was seamlessly integrated into commercial transactions, a far cry from the self-service model of today. For daily necessities, you didn't drive to a sprawling supermarket. Instead, you walked to the corner store. If your mother needed a loaf of bread or a bottle of milk, it was your mission. Handing over a dollar bill felt like a significant transaction, and you'd return home not just with the bread and milk, but with a handful of change jingling in your pocket, a tangible reward for a job well done. These small shops were more than retail outlets. They were the hearts of their communities. The owner knew you by name, knew your siblings, and would always take a moment to ask about your day or your progress in school. It was a personal, familiar interaction that reinforced a deep sense of belonging, a feeling that you were a recognized and valued part of a larger whole. This world of personal connection extended to entertainment, which was both simple and spectacular. We'll explore that next. From the corner store to the service station, life was built on personal interactions. But when the sun went down, where did families go for fun? Stay with us as we pull back the curtain on 1950s entertainment, from the drive-in to the living room. When the work week was done and the sun began to set, entertainment in the 1950s was a communal affair. often centered around leaving the house or gathering the family in the living room. A trip to the cinema was a cherished weekly event, not a spur of a moment decision complicated by online bookings. Ticket cost about 48 cents, a small price for a grand escape. For that, you were ushered into a comfortable seat, the smell of freshly popped popcorn filling the air. The experience was a package deal, a newsreel, a cartoon, and then the main feature. You didn't need to plan ahead, you simply went, and the show was almost always worth the trip. For those nights when staying in was the plan, a revolution was heating up in the kitchen. The TV dinner, introduced by C.A. Swanson and Sons in 1953, changed mealtime forever. For around 98 cents, you could purchase a sleek aluminum tray partitioned into sections, offering a full meal of turkey, cornbread dressing, peas, and sweet potatoes. The appeal was undeniable, a hot meal with absolutely no cleanup. Families embraced this convenience, especially on nights when everyone wanted to gather around the new black and white television set. No one used the term processed food back then. It was simply seen as easy, modern, and fun. The 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air was more than just a car. It was a rolling piece of art and a symbol of achievement. With its distinctive two-tone paint jobs, gleaming chrome accents, and powerful V8 engine, the Bel Air looked like it was in motion even when parked at the curb. Owning one was a clear marker of making it, a testament to American automotive style and power. It represented a new era of personal freedom and design. Meanwhile, in the hands of children, imagination was the only engine required. The iconic red radio flyer wagon was every kid's dream. It was a hauler for toys and pets, a transport for groceries and even younger siblings. When a sudden rain shower hit, a simple flip transformed it from a wagon into a pirate ship or a secret fort. The only upgrade needed was an endless supply of imagination. But even with all this fun, a shadow of worry existed. Up next, we look at health, trust, and the unseen anxieties of the era. From the glamour of the Bel Air to the simple joy of a red wagon, the era was full of iconic images. But beneath the surface of fun and convenience, life had its own set of rules and rituals, especially when it came to health and community. In our next part, we'll look at the personal care and deep-seated trust that define daily life. The peace of mind in the 1950s extended beyond affordable fun and into the very core of personal well-being and community safety. If you fell ill, the response was a far cry from a frantic drive to an urgent care clinic. Your family didn't take you to the doctor came to you. You would call your family physician, and he would arrive at your doorstep, black medical bag in hand. He'd sit on the edge of your bed or examine you right there in your living room, his presence alone offering a level of reassurance that medicine often lacks today. This wasn't just a transaction. It was a relationship built on profound personal attention and trust, making you feel genuinely cared for in the comfort of your own home. This same fundamental trust was the bedrock of community life. Houses were often left unlocked, not because crime was non-existent, but because a shared, unspoken agreement existed among neighbors. If someone knocked on your door, you opened it without a second thought, expecting it to be a relative returning, a borrowed tool, or a neighbor with a plate of freshly baked cookies. When a family went on vacation, they didn't install a security system or ask a stranger to house visit. They simply left their key with the next-door neighbor. This simple act of faith meant your mail was collected, your plants were watered, and sometimes, homemade pie would be waiting for you on your kitchen counter upon your return. This mutual reliance was the invisible security system, the bedrock of daily life. This trust even extended to property like automobiles, which were built with a durability that matched the era's self-reliance. Brand new Ford F-100 pickup truck, a symbol of sturdy American workmanship, could be purchased for under $1,500. It was a vehicle with no touchscreens, no Bluetooth, just solid steel, a basic AM radio, and a spacious bench seat. If something broke, the expectation wasn't to take it to a specialist. It was to fix it yourself, a respected and necessary skill. In fact, some vehicles were so basic they didn't even come with door locks. You could park your car, slip the key under the sun visor, and walk away with the absolute confidence that nobody would touch it. Today, we need passwords for our household appliances. But back then, a simple, collective trust was the ultimate security system. This stark contrast highlights a dramatic shift in our societal mindset. But what about the technology that was beginning to enter the home? That brings us to the family television. From the doctor's black bag to the key under the visor, trust was the invisible glue of society. But as new technology like television began to arrive, it brought families together in a whole new way. Coming up, we take a closer look at that magical piece of furniture in the living room and the simple, creative play of childhood. In the 1950s living room, the television set was more than just an electronic device. It was a piece of furniture, a substantial wooden cabinet with legs and a fabric-covered speaker. Its screen was often no larger than a dinner plate, displaying images in black and white, with a resolution we'd find frustratingly low today. Yet this heavy, boxy console was the undisputed focal point of family entertainment. When it malfunctioned, your father didn't consider replacing it. Instead, he'd call a repairman, a professional who would arrive with a tube tester and a soldering iron, a stark contrast to our modern era of lightweight, disposable flat screens. There were no remote controls to lose between the couch cushions. Changing the channel on the rotary dial was a manual task that required getting up from your seat. And, as was often the custom, the person sitting closest to the set was designated the official channel changer. Was that you? This small act of getting up and walking across the room was a part of the viewing ritual. The rabbit ears antenna on top of the set was another source of interactive family drama. To get a clear picture of a beloved show like I Love Lucy, someone would have to be sent up to the roof with a wrench to carefully adjust the main antenna. One small turn in the wrong direction, and the screen would dissolve into a snowstorm of static. But when you got it just right, the reward was a perfect, clear picture, a small victory for the whole family. Outside the home, childhood was defined by a level of freedom that seems almost unimaginable now. Children rode their bicycles for hours without helmets or knee pads. Scrapes and bruises were commonplace, not causes for concern. If you fell, you limped home, and your mother would clean the wound with iodine, a remedy that stung with an intensity that felt like a miracle cure itself. These minor injuries were simply part of growing up, teaching unspoken lessons about resilience and physical limits. Creative play was also wonderfully analog. When Mr. Potato Head debuted in 1952 as the first toy advertised on television, the forgotten detail was that it didn't come with a plastic potato. You had to provide a real one from your kitchen to stick the plastic facial features into. Try handing a child a raw potato today and telling them it's a toy. The idea highlights the simple, inventive spirit of the time, but life wasn't all scraped knees and potatoes. There were also serious rituals that brought the extended family together, like the sacred Sunday dinner. From fixing the TV rabbit ears to riding bikes without a helmet, childhood was a hands-on adventure. But the week always culminated in a special day that brought the whole clan together. In our next part, we pull up a chair to the Sunday dinner table and explore other enduring rituals of the decade. Sunday in the 1950s was a day with its own distinct rhythm. Pause from the week's labor marked by non-negotiable rituals. The centerpiece was Sunday dinner, a sacred gathering that brought together the entire family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and that one uncle who inevitably told the same story every single week. The menu was a comforting classic, a perfectly roasted chicken or beef, a mountain of mashed potatoes with gravy, and of course, the infamous Jell-O mold. This shimmering, quivering creation, often filled with unexpected ingredients like suspended fruit cocktail, shredded carrots, or even cottage cheese, was a staple at every gathering. Did anyone truly love its unique texture? Probably not. But everyone took a polite spoonful out of tradition. The point of the meal wasn't really about the food. It was about the gathering itself, the ritual of being together, sharing stories, and reinforcing family bonds. This sense of communal support extended far beyond the family dinner table. When a neighbor had a new baby, the entire street would mobilize. There were no online registries or delivery services, just friends helping friends. Casseroles, home-baked bread, and bags of hand-me-down clothes would appear on the new parent's doorstep. New fathers would proudly hand out cigars to celebrate the arrival. This was a society where your street was your extended family, ready to offer practical help and share in life's joys. The outside world was also undergoing dramatic shifts. In 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state, and too many mainland Americans, It felt like a glimpse into a different, exotic world. Postcards featuring beaches, volcanoes, and hula skirts started appearing in mailboxes, sparking dreams of paradise. Meanwhile, the fear of a different kind of arrival was also present. Polio was a very real and terrifying threat. During summer outbreaks, parents would keep their children away from public pools, movie theaters, and anywhere crowds might gather. Summer became a time of both fun and underlying worry. A major breakthrough came in 1953 with the first successful open-heart surgery using a heart-lung machine. An achievement that sounded like science fiction, stopping a heart, repairing it, and then restarting it. This miracle of modern medicine launched the era of cardiac surgery and offered a beacon of hope. The social fabric was also being rewoven in small, meaningful ways. Men wore hats, fedoras, and flat caps as a standard part of their attire when leaving the house. It was a sign of respect, a social uniform. They would tip their hats when greeting a woman, or remove them upon entering a home. A silent, fleeting gesture of courtesy that has now largely faded from our daily interactions. From the solemnity of Sunday dinner to the joy of a new baby on the block, community was everything. But the world was getting smaller and faster, and new habits were forming. Up next, we look at the changing ways Americans communicated, traveled, and spent their money. The 1950s marked a transition in how Americans connected with each other and the world around them. With communication and travel both retaining an analog charm while hinting at the speed to come, the telephone was a fixture, but it was often a rotary model mounted on the kitchen wall. Making a call required patience and dexterity. You carefully placed your finger in the correct hole for each number and let the dial spin back. If you fumbled the last digit, you had to start all over again. Most families had just one phone, so when it rang, everyone in the house would race to answer it, as there was no voicemail to catch a missed call. Many households even shared a party line with their neighbors, meaning you might pick up the phone only to overhear someone else's conversation. Getting your own private line was considered a major upgrade, a game changer that meant no more waiting or accidental eavesdropping. When families hit the road for a vacation, it was a true adventure. The Interstate Highway System, authorized by the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, was only just beginning to be constructed, for its network of fast uniform roads existed. Long-distance travel meant navigating a patchwork of state and U.S. highways. This required patience, sense of exploration, and thorough preparation for potential breakdowns. Travelers relied on large, detailed paper maps, often free from gas stations. If you got lost, there was no GPS to recalculate. You simply stopped at a local gas station or general store and asked for directions. Strangers were almost invariably kind and helpful, sometimes even drawing you a little map on a napkin. In the car itself, safety was an afterthought. On long trips, no one wore seatbelts, in fact. Many cars didn't even have them. Kids would move around freely in the back of a spacious station wagon. Windows down, the family dog's head hanging out into the breeze, catching the smells of the open road. Mom would pass sandwiches and drinks back from a cooler on the front seat. While less safe by modern standards, these trips are remembered as golden moments of freedom and happy family chaos. Money, too, was beginning its transformation. For everyday purchases, cash was king, and handling it was a tactile lesson in value for children. But a significant shift occurred in 1950 with the debut of the Diners Club card, the first modern credit card. Initially intended for businessmen to pay for meals without cash, it signaled the start of a credit-based society. By the end of the decade, more people were signing up, and the fine print of interest rates was often overlooked. Despite this newfangled invention, daily banking remained rigid. Bank hours were strict. If you didn't make it before 3 p.m. on a Friday, you simply had no cash until Monday morning. There were no ATMs, no banking apps, just a teller behind a glass window and the satisfying thump of a stamp on your deposit slip. This analog world was about to be rocked by a new kind of sound, however, the sound of rock and roll. From rotary phones to paper maps, life required a little more patience and a lot more personal interaction. But the youth were clamoring for something new and electric. In our next part, we turn up the volume on the cultural revolution that was about to change everything. The mid-1950s saw the emergence of a force that would fundamentally reshape society, the American teenager. And the soundtrack to this revolution was rock and roll. When a young Elvis Presley released That's All Right in 1954, A raw, energetic new sound exploded onto the airwaves. Teens felt a pure, unadulterated energy in the music, and every swivel of Elvis's hips on television seemed to rewrite the rules of social conduct. Parents panicked, preachers warned from pulpits, but teens simply turned the volume up. This new youth culture had its own icons and its own hangouts. Shows like American Bandstand, hosted by the clean-cut Dick Clark, went national in 1957. Every afternoon, teens would rush home to watch their peers dance the latest steps on TV, learning new moves like the stroll and keeping up with what was cool, from fashion to music. This cultural shift was happening against the backdrop of a thrilling and terrifying new age, the atomic age. The first nuclear power plant had switched on in Idaho in 1951, its output barely enough to light a few light bulbs. But for Americans, it was the spark of a new era, both exciting and slightly fearful. The space race accelerated by the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik in 1957, a beach ball-sized satellite that sent shockwaves through. America made science a sudden priority in classrooms. Suddenly, the future was something to be both won and feared. This anxiety manifested in everyday life. School children practiced duck and cover drills, hiding under their desks in preparation for a potential nuclear attack. Some families built bomb shelters in their backyards, stocking them with canned goods and water, a physical manifestation of Cold War anxieties. Yet this fear was balanced by a boundless optimism and fascination with the future. The microchip was invented in 1958, a tiny, unassuming device that nobody outside of laboratories paid much attention to. People were far more impressed by automatic garage door openers. But this tiny invention would lay the groundwork for every digital device we use today. This fascination also extended to consumer goods. Temps, the orange powdered drink, became a household name after astronaut John Glenn drank it in orbit in 1962. Suddenly, every child had to have it, associating it with the glamour and adventure of space travel. Similarly, space food sticks, chewy, slightly peanut butter flavored snacks, found their way into lunchboxes, bringing a taste of astronaut fare to the school cafeteria. The era was a strange mix of innocent fun and serious geopolitical tension. Meanwhile, back on the ground, family life continued with its own set of routines. From the weekly trip to the beauty parlor to the challenge of sharing one bathroom. From the roar of rock and roll to the beep of Sputnik, the world was changing fast. But in neighborhoods across America, life had its own rhythms and realities. Up next, we step inside the typical home to explore the daily routines, from beauty parlors to shared bathrooms that defined the decade. Life was governed by a different set of priorities, where self-reliance was a virtue, and daily routines were often communal affairs. Most families made do with a single bathroom, often tiled in cheerful pastels like pink, mint green, or baby blue. This wasn't considered a hardship, but a simple fact of life that taught cooperation and patience. Bathing multiple children was a military-style operation. The oldest went first, followed by the next, and so on, with the youngest often ending up in the same bathwater. This was thriftiness and practicality in action, a far cry from modern expectations of ensuite bathrooms for every bedroom. Chores were not seen as a burden, but as a natural part of contributing to the household, and they also served as a primary form of exercise. No one needed a gym membership. Mowing the lawn required a manual push mower, a task that provided a genuine workout. Chopping wood for the fireplace, hanging laundry on the line to dry in the fresh air, this was the daily physical activity that kept people fit. And somehow it seemed, your grandfather was in better shape for it, possessing a lean strength built from practical, purposeful movement. At the heart of this self-sufficient spirit was the heavy steel toolbox, a symbol of pride for the man of the house. It was often dented and greasy, filled not just with tools but with the knowledge to fix anything from a broken toaster and a squeaky door hinge to a sputtering lawnmower engine. This toolbox represented a spirit of self-sufficiency, a belief that with the right know-how and a little elbow grease, you could solve most problems yourself. You didn't automatically call a repairman, you first tried to fix it. What repair skill did you learn from your father or grandfather while standing beside that toolbox? The item you were proudest to fix was a small testament to your own growing capability. For women, certain routines were also social rituals. A trip to the beauty parlor was a regular event, a place where the scent of hairspray and perm solution filled the air. Women would sit under giant helmet-shaped hair dryers, their hair set in metal rollers, forced into a period of stillness that provided the perfect opportunity to read magazines, chat, and exchange neighborhood news. It was a dedicated space for female connection and gossip. Even the simple act of telling time required a learned skill. Watches and clocks had hands and Roman numerals. Understanding their position was a basic skill taught to every child. Today, this analog skill is fading, as many children grow up surrounded only by digital displays. This world of tangible skills and physical routines was also a world of distinct flavors, some more beloved than others. From fixing a toaster to reading an analog clock, life was full of small, satisfying skills. But the kitchen held its own adventures and challenges, especially when it came to the latest convenience foods and, of course, that wobbly staple of family gatherings. In our next part, we take a seat at the dinner table and explore the culinary landscape of the era. The 1950s kitchen was a laboratory of convenience and a stage for some truly memorable, sometimes questionable, culinary creations. Leading the charge in convenience was the canned food revolution. Pantries were stocked with Spam, Campbell's soups, and fruit cocktail as everyday staples. This wasn't just about ease of preparation. With the anxieties of the Cold War simmering, families often stocked their pantries like miniature bomb shelters, ready for any emergency. Canned goods represented both a modern convenience and a sense of preparedness. The TV dinner, with its compartmentalized aluminum tray, became a freezer staple. While Swanson's turkey dinner was the pioneer, other companies quickly followed, offering a variety of meals that working mothers, in particular, found to be a lifesaver. The novelty of having a complete meal, including a small dessert section, made them a popular treat, even if the pie was often scalding hot compared to the main course. But the undisputed queen of the 1950s dinner table was Jell-O. It was far more than a simple dessert. It was a versatile medium for culinary expression. Cookbooks of the era were filled with recipes for elaborate molded gelatin salads that could contain everything from suspended ham and vegetables to flaked fish. Savory Jell-O flavors like celery, Italian salad, and seasoned tomato were readily available, encouraging home cooks to push the boundaries of what could be encased in a wobbling, shimmering mold. Imagine a child's face upon being presented with a wobbly plate of lime, low with shredded carrots and chunks of canned tuna suspended within. If you had to finish everything on your plate, you might be sitting at the table for a very long time. Beyond the gelatin molds, other culinary trends defined the decade. Fizzies were a hit with kids' tablets that you dropped into a glass of water, where they would fizz and dissolve, turning plain water into a sweet carbonated fruit drink. The process itself was half the fun, like making your own personal soda. For a real treat, a trip to the A&W drive-up was an unforgettable experience. You'd park your car, and a car hop on roller skates would glide over to take your order and later return with a tray that hooked onto your window, bearing a frosty mug of root beer and a juicy burger. Watching them navigate the parking lot on skates was part of the entertainment. It was the whole experience, the food, the family, the novelty that made it so special. But while Mom was in the kitchen, Dad and the kids often had their eyes on something else. The Wild West unfolding on the television screen. From a wiggly Jell-O mold to a frosty root beer float, the flavors of the 50s were unforgettable. But for entertainment after dinner, families often turned to tales of cowboys and sheriffs. In our next part, we ride into the sunset with the westerns and other childhood obsessions of the era. For a boy growing up in the 1950s and early 60s, westerns were everything. The cowboy was the ultimate hero, and John Wayne was his king. The television schedule was filled with shootouts and saloon brawls from shows like Gunsmoke, If Gun Will Travel, and Bonanza, which had the distinction of being the first Western broadcast in color. This made it a special event. You'd find a friend or neighbor with a color TV set and gather round to see the Ponderosa in all its vibrant glory. This fascination spilled out of the living room and into the backyard. Armed with a cap gun and a cowboy hat, every kid could be a sheriff for the afternoon. The caps would pop and smoke with each imaginary gunfight, adding a layer of realism to the endless adventures staged among the bushes and swing sets. This kind of imaginative play was fueled by a toy industry that was both creative and, by today's standards, remarkably unconcerned with safety. High-risk toys were accepted as part of growing up. Science kits came with chemicals that could produce toxic fumes. And ovens like the Thing Maker allowed you to create rubbery creatures on a hot plate, an activity that would likely horrify modern safety regulators. BB guns were a common rite of passage. The general attitude was that children needed to learn that life had dangers and to be careful. A burn or a scar wasn't a reason for a lawsuit. It was a badge of honor, proof of an adventure, and a lesson learned. Other toys were simply challenging. Rock'em Sock'em robots, where you tried to pop your opponent's head off. Major Matt Mason action figures with joints that often broke. And creepy crawlers, which let you make your own rubber insects. These toys encouraged a kind of hands-on, slightly risky engagement that is rare today. As the decade turned into the 1960s, the memories continued to accumulate. Family vacations were revisited not on a smartphone screen, but with a slide projector. The living room would darken, and the family would gather as the machine clicked through images of past trips. The large, bright images on the wall, bringing back the sounds and smells of summers gone by. It was a family ritual of reminiscing. And then on July 20th, 1969, the ultimate adventure unfolded on live television. The moon landing was an unforgettable moment of collective exhilaration. As Neil Armstrong took his first step onto the lunar surface, the impossible became real. Watched in living rooms across the nation, that small step felt like a giant leap for everyone. It fostered a generation's interest in science and space, and for one magical moment, the world felt united in wonder. So what's your most vivid memory from this incredible era? Was it the taste of zebra-striped gum, the feel of a wind-up watch, or the sight of a brand new car in the driveway? Your memories are a living legacy. If you enjoyed this journey through time, please share your own stories in the comments below. And for more glimpses into the past, make sure you subscribe to Winds of Thought.